right, welcome to my noodling guide. What is noodling? Well, that was noodling. It's just freeform improvisation, just playing around with notes and making sounds that sound pretty. In the guitar world, it's a little scoffed at, but for ukulele players, we're a lot more chill. We just have fun, do what feels good, man. Enjoy it. I think it's a good way to practice improvising solos if you want to be that sort of player, and it's a good way to practice techniques. If you want to practice your hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, all that jazz. Some people say playing scales is boring. This is a way to practice scales that I think is really fun and interesting because we're not just running through the scale over and over again. We're actually using it in context and finding fun ways to make it work for us. So yeah, you don't need to know your scales or anything for today's lesson, but disclaimer: this is not for day one beginners. I do expect you to know a couple chords, how to pluck, how to strum, maybe if that's your thing. I'm not going to teach you all the basics, but if you do need help with that stuff, please join us on the Uke Tribe Discord. We'd be glad to help out, point you in the right direction, and have some fun with you on the uke. Hear what you're playing, help you play better. Also, if you prefer to read instead of watch this video, the summary is all up on my website. No cost to you. Just no signups, none of that BS. Just go ahead, click the link. It's all in the description. And finally, this works for reentrant and linear. I play low G linear. So sometimes if I say it's going to be an octave, it'll be a unison if you're reentrant. Or if I say it's unison, it'll be the opposite. It'll be an octave. That's all it is. No big deal. It'll still work. Just adapt as necessary for your particular ukulele. All right, enough yapping. Let's get into it. We're gonna start with the G chord because we're playing in G major, and just so we're all on the same page, index finger goes on the D, ring finger goes on the G, middle finger goes on the B. And this is important because the main thing we're doing right now is lifting our fingers to find different chords that we can play, different sounds that we can play in our key. So what we're going to do is we're going to play through all the variations that we get from lifting up a finger, and I just want you to listen to the various options. Now, I'm going to go through this at a blazing speed because I don't want this video to be an hour long. You take your time and explore it at your own pace. Okay? And the idea is to internalize the sound. If you're not going to memorize the chord names, at least memorize what the sound feels like. All right, so home bass. Home bass is this G chord. If we lift the index finger, we get this sound. If we lift the ring finger, then we get this sound. And if we lift the middle finger, we get this sound. If we place the index finger back on while the others are lifted, we get this sound. Pretty, right? If we can also lift that and put the ring finger back down, we get this sound. And if we place the index finger back in, we get this sound. And finally, if we lift the index, if we lift the ring and we place the middle finger, we get this sound. So these are just different options for us to try out. All right. So at your own pace, let's play through each of these and then go back to the G chord. So you hear the difference from G chord, not G chord. lift ring finger, right? What are the other options? If you go in order, it's a little bit easier to keep track, but whatever, we're improvising. Makes sense? So the idea is to get really familiar with your home bass and then think of the different directions you can go. All right. So once you familiarize yourself with your your home bass and then your variations, let's start playing with a little bit more freedom, right? Um, let's play one measure of home bass followed by a measure of something else, and then another measure of something else, and then return back to home bass. Right, and so I just start feeling how that works. And a thing to do is only focus on one hand at a time. So we're going to be moving the left hand around. So just keep your right hand constant. Just do the same thing every time. Okay. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2. I messed up. Anyway, that's the general idea of how to get familiar with the two things. Again, this is, you don't need to be, there's no really wrong answer, right? This is just exploration. Again, do as I say, not as I do. Next, we're going to add licks into the practice. So what a lick is just a series of notes. If you repeat that enough, it becomes a riff or a motif or a theme for your piece. The motifs or themes are how we recognize a piece is a specific piece, right? So, right? You play that lick enough, it gets stuck in your head, and that's that lick, that's that song, right? But we're not trying to do anything specific just yet. The reason why we go back to home base every time is to create that sort of motif or theme for our noodling. So we're creating the foundation by having that constant thing that we return to every time, and then we can explore different licks, how it relates to that. And so you want your licks to be somewhat related to each other. Kind of think of it in the same way as singing. You know, if you think of a solo as a sentence, right? The licks would be similar to the words that make up to that sentence. So you want the sentence to make sense, the words to go to work together. So you also want your licks to kind of work together. And there's a couple ways to do that. Say you're making a rising lick, so you repeat that. Right? That's it's a cohesive thing. Right? Or go the other way. Or you can target a specific note. Say you want to land on the G, right? Or you can have a specific run that goes into a different direction. So call and response, there's a bunch of things. You play around with it, but keep in mind trying to make it like a phrase. We're sort of trained to hear sentences, and thinking of the music in that same sort of context is useful. So the next thing to do is you play a measure of home bass, and then you create 2 measures of licks based on lifting your fingers. Right? We're just cycling through the shapes that we've already explored, and then returning to home base. And yeah, it's improvisation, so I can't tell you what to do. do what comes naturally. that makes sense. I do apologize if it feels supernatural to me and then it doesn't make sense as like the rest of the flippin' owl, right? But yeah, if you have any questions, please ask. Please ask. I would love to clarify for you. I am I am not a teacher. I am just doing this for fun. All right. One last thing before we move on to the real fun is this is a good time to introduce mixing in practicing advanced techniques with this exercise. It isn't advanced. I say advanced. It's a hammer-on and a pull-off. If you don't know how to do hammer-ons and pull-offs, there's the guide actually has a link to a good tutorial on it. But it's basically you hammer on or you pull off. So if you want to practice your hammer-ons and pull-offs, you just mix it into one of the things that you're doing while you're doing this exercise, right? So instead of just like, oh, I'm practicing my hammer-ons, right? You get to make some music. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? I think that's cool. All right, moving right along. The next exercise. So that was the lifting fingers exercise because we had our chord and we lifted our fingers. We got different sounds, and we played around with those sounds. Right now, we're going on to the exercise I call unison and octaves. Right. So if you may have noticed that we're playing a G on this open string and we're playing a G here. And again, unison octave is going to depend on if you're reentrant or not. But these are essentially the same note with slightly different character, right? This is in the octave case, it's a whole different register. This is high, this is low, right? But even if you're playing a unison note, it's there's a different character. I'll go into that in a minute. We're not going to go past the 5th fret today, but you are certainly welcome to. And yeah, try not to look at your fretboard if you can. That's still a thing I recommend. All right, same position for the G chord. Index, ring, middle. That's going to be important because what we're going to do next is we're going to add the octave of D. Right, we're going to use our pinky, add this D on the 5th fret on the A string. Now you need to have good posture with your hand, with your position to do this. Like if you have your thumb way over the fretboard, it's going to be really hard to get the right. Also, this is a situational position that may not be easy for people to do, especially if you haven't practiced it. It'd be something to work up towards. So instead of using the pinky like this, what we're going to do is lift the index and lift the ring and the middle finger, place the middle finger on the G here, and then put the pinky on the D here. So this shape should be a lot more comfortable in general. It's sort of the standard hand position, one finger per fret kind of deal. It's a really common way to approach hand positioning on the fretboard. So this should be a lot more comfortable. And you should be able to explore what the octave, this is going to be an octave if you're linear or reentrant. And then this, right? So we got this. Yes, fun. If your hand gets sore, shake it out. This takes muscles, and those muscles take time to build up. So don't worry if it's a little difficult at first. Noodling is a great way to practice getting into this, learning this new hand shape, right? This is, if it's something you've never done before, it's going to take a little time to get. I mean, I'm sure if you can play this G chord, you understand what it's like, right? It gets better. I promise. So All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to learn this new hand shape. So we're going to go back and forth between this standard G shape and this G5 shape. You don't need to know that it's called the G5, but that's the name of the chord, so that's what I'm going to refer to it as, you know, so sorry. So just try to go back and forth a little bit, right, until you're comfortable. So now that we've added this in and we're getting comfortable with it, we can add it to the previous exercise of creating licks with the improvisation. All right, so let's make our new home bass. Our new home bass is one measure of G5, followed by one measure of G. And then we have two measures of freeform. All right, and it's the same. You can lift your finger, you can place your finger. Oh, one thing I should note, now that we're in this shape, this also frees up your pointer finger to do interesting things. Right? So one of the reasons why you might want to use the pinky in the original G shape is so you can do this really quickly. But you can find ways. You figure out what works for you and your hand shape and your play style, right? Only you can decide what you want to do. So let's try this. Oops, I almost went ahead. That makes sense though? Kinda. And then yeah, if your hand gets sore, shake it out. Don't the muscles will come in time. And you know, you can repeat that as much as you like. Just whenever you pick up your uke, if you don't want to play something specific, just noodle around. All right, from here on, we're gonna go pretty fast. Again, I'm just blazing through this so that this video is not an hour long. Inside the document, I talk about the major, minor 7, and major 7 chords that come out of this. You don't need to know that, but if you do, if you recognize some of these shapes, that's cool. It's a good time to mention that the reason why this works in general is it's a specific thing to the G major scale, because A minor 7 is a diatonic chord in the G major scale. That means all of these notes are in the G major scale. So this doesn't work with every single chord combination, every single open chord. You can't do it with A, for example. Oh, you can. No, you can't. Anyway, this works because these chords are related. So what this means is if you want to explore other keys, you can do this with other chords, and the same thing kind of works. But the feature of being able to use open chords for this specific situation is unique. So I just want to let you know that. And then, yeah, I'm going to use the note names. You don't need to know the note names, but it certainly helps, and it's a good way to get used to your fretboard, especially if you want to ever get past an intermediate level. You really want to know your fretboard. Okay, enough talking. Let's go. The first note we added outside of the G major triad was the open C. So, right, we lifted up our index finger to make this lovely chord. So this is C, open C, right? So that means we can also play this C. This is C, the note C. And notice, we just did this with D, right? We added the octave D, so we're adding the octave C here. And this adds a new dimension to what is available in our noodling. Home bass. Neat, right? So what I would suggest is for each one of these, take some time, take a while to see what happens and what different sounds you can make with the addition of this layer, right? Just like how we started with this palette of choices from lifting. Now we have this palette of another note to use. Figure out different ways how your fingers work, different things you can do. Have fun with it. The next note we added was the open E string. So the note E. And we have another E here on the 4th fret of the C string. And this is going to be a unison. Now, why would you ever want to play this note instead of the open note? There's a couple reasons. First, you get hammer-ons and slides. That's pretty cool. You can't really hammer on into an open string. Also, the texture of the tone is slightly different. The reason why there's a thickness to the unison is because the tuning is slightly different, and it is a different texture. So if you listen closely, you can hear it, and you'll kind of get used to it, and you'll try to figure out when it sounds better to go or. It might be subtle, but it makes a difference. And finally, if you want to play the notes at the same time or have them kind of ring over each other, right? It's really different from, right? So there's that too. So unison notes are pretty cool. They're pretty helpful. And especially if you're in re-entrant, you get a lot of unisons. Oh, I forgot to mention we get the C up here, right? That becomes a unison, and that makes some interesting things. Also, since we added in this E, we get some bar chords. Nice thing is C major. It might be more advanced or intermediate levels. We were playing this chord already. This is a C major 7. But now this can be used in our improvisation practice. I keep wanting to skip ahead. All right, E string. The final note we added was the open A string. A, right? We did. So A is valid. We got a unison A, 5th fret on the E string. So again, you can do cool things like that. Also a good time to mention dyads. Dyads are just any 2 notes played together. So any of these notes that we've had, you can play them and it creates a sort of punchy sound. You play around with that, incorporate that into your improvisation. And of course, the A on the G string, which most people should be familiar with. Notice that there's an octave here, same as the octave C, just in a different position. Home bass. you're getting tired of this G5 to G thing, you can also do A minor to C. Should also mention that there's a closed A minor shape. It's rarely used, but it is a pretty nice one. It's pretty cool. Okay, let me not get lost in noodling because that happens. Gotta keep it short. Last but not least, we had the B note, which was here all along. We didn't add this, but its use on the G string, it varies. If you're linear or reentrant, it's a little different to use. For low G, you get to have some cool runs, kind of based around it. For the reentrant players, you get to do cool things like playing these notes close together. Like normally, you couldn't play a B and a C next to each other. Well, I can't because I'm low, right? But you get to, and that's your privilege, and it's a pretty cool thing. I will admit, I do admit, it's fun. Yeah, and then you get bar chords. I really like this E version of E, but E minor. Moving right along, the final frontier, the last piece of the puzzle to is F sharp. This was not in either of the chords that we played, and you either have to know this because you looked up what's in the scale, or you constructed your scale, or you know it sounds right to you that the major seventh is a half step below the tonic or root note, or learning how to construct scales is useful too. Root, whole, half, whole, half. That's all it is. But yeah, F sharp. This completes our picture of the frets we can reliably press that are harmonious in the key of G major. That's what a G major scale means. And here we have our whole scale. If you're not ready to learn your scales by name yet, you can learn it by shape. I did that for like the first 7 or 8 years of playing ukulele. Totally fine by me. I think it's okay. The shape is basically open 2 4. This 5 is a unison, so if it confuses you, you don't even need to think about it. Open 2 4, open 2 4, and then open 2 3 5, open 2 3 5. So it's the same pattern twice on the different strings. Just remember, this is unison. Boom. All right. So if you're a shapes player, that's what it's about. Adding F sharp unlocks a bunch of chords. And the last thing I want to talk about is this F sharp is the major 7. So we get the very nice major 7 scale. Oh, I should mention, mess around with it, see how it behaves. Because there's a very particular sound that the major 7 creates. And the name of the game is getting those sounds internalized so that when you want this sound, you can pull it out and you know how to use it and you know where it comes from. Now, if we flatten the major 7th by a half step, we get a dominant 7. which you may be familiar in the G7 dominant chord, right? And so this is to show that a half step makes a pretty noticeable difference and can change the whole way a thing is structured. So the example I wanted to give was our D7 chord, really common. If you're familiar with jazz, you would resolve that into a G major 7. So there's a whole thing about tension and release. You know, the jazz thing. But if we use a G major 7 instead, we can resolve it to a C, and that makes it more of a Hawaiian style sound. So it's a change of one fret, but it makes a big difference. But I show you this because now we got a G7. We use an F in our scale. We can noodle if we make our home bass this D7, G7, C. We can noodle in a more Hawaiian style sounding thing. Neat, right? So this is how we can break out of the rails once we figure out what they are, right? So this is not a note in the key of G major, but we can add it in and we suddenly have this interesting new run that we can do, and it kind of changes the whole game, right? So yeah, I think that's fun. I think that's cool. And just to show you that once you're familiar, go ahead and start bending the rules. Try out different notes. Why not? They're all frets, so you can play them. And the point of noodling is just to get yourself familiar with all the different sounds you can make and the different ways your fingers can move to make those sounds. So cool. So where do you go from here? Well, we learned the G major scale today. You can use this exercise with any other scale. More often than not, if you have a chord in a progression, they're going to kind of tell you what notes you can play in that key. It's going to tell you the key just by virtue of our octaves and unisons thing, right? So is where knowing your fretboard comes in handy, but you can always just guess and check too. Also, the patterns of octaves is consistent, right? It doesn't change. It's always going to be, once you get familiar with it, it's not as intimidating as it might seem. So you can take this with different scales. You can use it for learning new chords. So if you want to, learn the B major chord, and bars are hard for you, right? Just make that one of your home basses instead. You can get used to going into that chord from different shapes. Oh, like I just demonstrated, you can, make up your own home basses to play around in, and of course you can add in your techniques if you're trying to work on something specific. Right? You go ahead with that. And if you just want to relax and make some noise and, chill out, I do this all the time. And of course, you know, moving up your fretboard, it's all there. So yeah, that's basically the guide. I hope this makes sense. I hope I didn't rest of the flippin' owl you. If I did, ask me questions in the comments, join us on Discord, and I would be glad to expound on any of it. And yeah, hope this helped. Hope this was fun. Aloha.